Resident Evil is a third-person zombie survival horror game created by the Japanese game company Capcom back in the year 1996 and subsequently remade in 2002. I will admit I have claimed to be a survival horror fan without having played any of the Resident Evil games. It was my experience with Amnesia: The Dark Descent where I acquired my appreciation for horror games and led me to play through a catalog of great horror titles. It was only until recently I arrived at playing a Resident Evil game, which would begin with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. After completing this title, I soon purchased and binge played through the initial few games of the franchise. I can't say I overwhelmingly like the series so far, but I did find myself going back and really enjoying the first game. Despite its age and initial unfriendliness, the game is a classic horror title and one I recommend to any fan who loves a bit of challenge. The story of Resident Evil begins in the year 1998 during a helicopter flight with the Alpha Team of the Special Tactics and Rescue Service, or STARS for short. They have been sent on a search and rescue mission to find their comrades of Bravo Team who lost contact with during an investigation of reported domestic terrorism and rumored cannibalism in the dark woods of Raccoon City. However, this is no ordinary mission, as Alpha Team discovers the brutal remains of Bravo Team and are shortly attacked by bloodthirsty, mutilated hounds. On the run while attempting to fight back, the team desperately finds refuge in a mysterious mansion located in the middle of the forest. Confused, scattered, and with no communication with the outside world, Alpha Team has no alternative but to explore the labyrinth interior of the mansion, survive against many grotesque creatures, and try to uncover what is going on.
Jill.
Barry, I didn't mean to get you that excited.
Right. Anyway, you should read this.
Although not as complex as it may initially seem, the story of Resident Evil is decently written and easy to digest. Most of the plot is communicated through the use of cutscenes featuring a small cast of distinct and likable characters.
That was a close one. A second late, you would have fit nicely into a sandwich.
As the protagonist, Resident Evil grants a choice between the combat-trained soldier Chris Redfield and the Special Forces operator Jill Valentine. Both protagonists share the overall same story, but do part in the details and experience several events unfold differently. To diversify even further, each protagonist is accompanied with their own unique supporting character. Being the weapons specialist, Barry Burton will occasionally provide Jill with special ammunition and prevent her from meeting a premature death a few times in her journey. On the other hand, the rookie Rebecca Chambers will aid Chris with healing and solve puzzles too difficult for him. While both protagonists and supporting characters are great, they are nowhere near as interesting as the game's unforgettable main setting, the Spencer Mansion. Being cloaked in mystery, the only way to discover the mansion's secrets is by the environmental storytelling and through its sparse number of collectible files left by its past inhabitants. These files reveal unsettling truths in clever ways and feature some of the best writing in a horror game. The last feature worth mentioning in Resident Evil's story is its multitude of endings. There are 12 in total and entirely depend on rescuing the supporting character and other protagonists from threatening situations. Saving them will lead to better endings, while saving less or no characters will result in a bittersweet finale. The good news is that rescuing a fellow team member is an incredibly easy task to do. Most scenarios will be presented in a binary choice or time-sensitive action. The only exception is during the final boss fight, where the player will most likely be unaware that the supporting character can actually be killed during combat. However, preventing this is also easy to do, as long as the player continues participating in the final fight. Upon completing the game, an ending will be awarded to the player based on his or her rescuing performance. Sadly, the endings themselves are simple variations of each other and are mostly devoid of any interesting significance. This problem isn't unique to Resident Evil, as most horror games with multiple endings tend to suffer the same fate as not having a satisfying ending. Besides this blemish, the rest of Resident Evil's story is nonetheless entertaining. The quote, "Enter the survival horror," perfectly illustrates the gameplay of Resident Evil. It can be challenging and a sometimes unforgiving experience, but thoroughly enjoyable. Given an inventory along with a measly knife to start with, the player will be tasked to explore, solve puzzles, and fight against a cast of monstrosities. At the beginning of each new game, the player is presented with a choice in difficulty and character selection. Framed in the question, "How do you like your games?" a choice is given between three options. Considered as normal, easy, and very easy, each option greatly affects not only how many enemies and items will be present within the experience, but also how much damage the enemies can give as well as receive. I suggest choosing the easy difficulty, as it offers an adequate amount of challenge without being too much of a cakewalk. Once a difficulty is chosen, next is character selection. As mentioned earlier, Resident Evil offers a choice between playing as Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine. From a gameplay point of view, both characters have their own advantages, along with an exclusive weapon, defensive item, and equipment. Here are the essentials of the two. To begin with Chris Redfield, he has increased health, faster movement, and better weapon handling. His exclusive weapon is the flamethrower, which is sadly only available for a limited time later on in his journey. As his defensive item, he uses the flash grenade, which not only negates an enemy attack, but also causes his attacker to go out with a bang. For his last exclusive item, Chris offers his pocket lighter. When paired with kerosene, the lighter can be used to burn zombie corpses with in order to prevent slain zombies from reanimating into the far more terrifying and deadly Crimson Heads. Moving on to the strengths of Jill Valentine, she is able to carry more items, use a taser as a defensive weapon, and wield the powerful grenade launcher. This powerful weapon has a few different types of grenade ammunition, allowing it to be incredibly effective against most enemies. For Jill's special equipment, she offers a handy lockpick, granting her access to several rooms that otherwise would require the use of old keys found within the environment. Now, with both characters' strengths summed up, who is the better choice for a first-time playthrough? While there isn't a huge difficulty discrepancy between both protagonists, I can't help but recommend playing as Jill Valentine. She is more suitable for newer players and can carry a total of 8 items, whereas Chris can only carry 6. Having this slight increase to carrying capacity will help alleviate inventory management, which is one of Resident Evil's most challenging aspects. Throughout the experience, there are many items to be found and collected. These items include various types of ammunition, weapons, colored herbs to restore health, and many puzzle-related objects. Items collected are then stored within the player's very limited and frequently overburdened inventory. Within the inventory, the player can either use an item, combine it with another item, or examine it using a neat 3D view to discover hidden details or uses. However, an important option not present is the ability to drop an item. This means if an item cannot be used or combined with another, then it will remain within the player's inventory until finding one of the inconveniently located safe rooms. In addition to being a resort from danger, the safe rooms in Resident Evil house a storage chest for the player to deposit items into and access later from. Due to the combination of a limited-sized inventory and large amount of pickups, the process of returning to the safe room to unload items into the storage chest can be incredibly cumbersome to do. In a way, this is how the game discourages the player from being overprepared by carrying too many items. In order to reduce the number of these repetitive trips, it's best to plan and carry only what is necessary for the task at hand. Trying to maximize free inventory space by carrying only the bare essentials will in turn allow for more pickups and less returning to the safe room. However, another reason to visit the safe room is to save progress. Within the safe room is the typewriter, functioning as the game's save system. The typewriter is the only way to save progression and will cost a found ink ribbon to operate. These ink ribbons are gradually acquired through the experience and do limit how many times the player can save game progression. This may seem alarming, but as long as the player is aware of this mechanic and is somewhat conservative with ink ribbons, this won't become an issue. Now, with all the benefits the safe rooms provide, they are few in numbers and sparsely located, requiring the player to travel through dangerous environments to find them. Including the Spencer Mansion, there are 4 locations in total and feature many unique areas to explore. Thankfully, the inventory contains a map to help navigate the levels and even has an added bonus of indicating if an area still has items to be collected. Additionally, hidden map pieces can be found which reveals areas not yet explored but won't reveal dangers within. The combat in Resident Evil is both simple and a bit awkward at first. Within the first few hours of gameplay, controlling the player character within the polarizing fixed camera view system can be disorienting. This is especially true when transitioning between areas. The fixed camera also limits vision in some areas, resulting in blind spots, allowing for a zombie to surprise the player. However, over time the controls and camera system do become more natural and less frustrating. In regards to the combat itself, it's best to have some distance between foes and to fire in their general direction. Due to the restrictive camera view, along with a lack of precise controls, aiming in Resident Evil is almost completely useless. Aside from aiming straight, the only direction is at a 45-degree angle looking up or down, and can hardly be used for precise firing. However, this isn't the case for the shotgun, as aiming up and waiting for the zombie to approach close enough will lead to a consistent way to guarantee a headshot. Being efficient with ammunition is important in Resident Evil. Unlike Left 4 Dead, ammunition is limited in supply, and enemies can soak up a lot of damage before going down. Despite being the most common enemy, the zombie won't be the only foe to look out for. The iconic mutilated canines, known as Cerberus, along with the lizard-like hunters join the fray, and make encountering the aforementioned Crimson Heads look like child's play. Other encountered monsters include infected giant spiders, snakes, bees, plants, and even sharks too. While the combat is a vital part in Resident Evil, it is not as significant as the puzzle-solving aspect. Rather than pure action, The game places great emphasis on exploration and solving puzzles. There are over 24 puzzles within the experience, and thankfully they don't require a ginormous brain or large cost of sanity to solve. This does not mean the puzzles are easy and won't take time to solve, but they are reasonable for the most part. The only puzzle I needed outside aid for was the out-of-water shark blocking the player in this small area. Without my friend telling me this control console was pushable, it would have taken me ages to figure this puzzle out. To sum up the gameplay, it's a classic blend of exploration, puzzle solving, and limited combat that we have come to love. Despite the lackluster aiming controls, constrained inventory, and sometimes irritating camera views, the gameplay of Resident Evil is not spoiled and still enjoyable. The audio and visual presentation of Resident Evil has aged incredibly well. The game's unique art style, coupled with a great use of lighting and ambient soundtrack, have captured an atmosphere that belongs with the likes of Rapture, Innsmouth, and Castle Brennenburg as one of the best horror game locations. Rarely has this formula of artistic elements failed, and Resident Evil is one of the earliest titles to prove its success. I must mention that this game is actually a 2015 remaster of a 2002 remake of a 1996 title for the original PlayStation. With this most recent version, the developers have enhanced the graphics and audio, along with the addition of several new features including widescreen support, a new alternative control scheme, and higher frame rates and resolutions. My only complaint with this remaster is not having an option to disable the door animation cutscenes. Whenever the player opens a door, climbs a ladder, and uses an elevator, a 7-second cutscene will play of the action being performed. While this does add suspense to entering a new area, these cutscenes cannot be skipped and quickly become repetitive. It may seem reasonable to have these unskippable cutscenes to allow time for loading, but with modern hardware, everything can load within a couple seconds, and thus renders these cutscenes without purpose. Thankfully, there is a mod available to download that removes the door, ladder, and elevator animations, and I've been using this mod in this review, hence why there hasn't been any of these animations shown until now. Aside from this complaint, the game can be enjoyed with up to 1200p resolutions with a steady 60 frames per second with mouse and keyboard or controller input. With the addition of the new control scheme, the player can either use the original tank controls, which can be a bit funky for the unacquainted, or the new, much more user-friendly alternative controls. I believe most players will prefer this new control scheme, but I recommend giving both a try. This remaster is by no means perfect, as it could have been improved further, but the developers did do a good job on this version overall, without breaking anything the previous version achieved. All in all, Resident Evil looks good, runs well, and has little, if any, bugs. To conclude this review, Resident Evil is a great game and my personal favorite of the series. There's a ton of replay value to be had by playing as both Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine. Furthermore, the game includes a scoring system, Steam achievements, and extra goodies for completing the game quickly. I am glad to have given a chance to this excellent first Resident Evil title and recommend other horror game lovers to jump in and indulge in this genre-defining classic set within the Raccoon City forest.